So I really wanted to start this episode with my very best con, but I realized nobody can out Shatner, especially not Zachary Quinto from Star Trek Into Darkness. So if you remember last episode, we did Star Trek Into Darkness, and we really didn't like it. So this week we did the better version of Wrath of Khan. Monte joined us again this week, so sit back and enjoy this week's MySequel on Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan.
Hello, Internet. This is Derek Olson with the MySequel podcast. I am joined once again this week with Matt.
Hello.
Robert.
Howdy.
And our very special guest, Monte.
Hi.
For you, the viewers or listeners, it's been a little bit of time for us. We got some drinks and turned on the air conditioner for a few minutes, and we're back. So we're just going to continue on talking. Tonight, we're talking about Star Trek Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II. If you haven't listened to it yet, I would definitely recommend you go back and listen to the last MySequel, which was on Into Darkness, the sequel to the reboot. We didn't have very kind things to say about that movie.
It sucked balls.
It did. Thanks, Robert.
You're
so
welcome.
eloquent.
But apparently it was an okay sequel.
Oh,
spoiler. Sorry.
One of your
So you got to go listen to this now. See, we make it.
God, last time I agree with Robert.
I'm not sure, but I think that just made Monte our new Jake.
Somebody has to just berate Robert the entire time.
Well, I'm actually figuring out what your criteria is for a sequel. So
It changes every time. I'm a hypocrite.
It kind of does.
We all are a little bit.
We were just talking about that too, that sometimes we do contradict ourselves.
Depends on how bad we like the movie or how much we don't like the movie.
I'm like a different person every time I do this.
Yeah.
At least this time you've actually seen the movies. Or wait, have you seen Motion Picture?
No.
That's been a running theme. Is a lot of times Matt has never seen the original movie that we do sequels to. So Matt's our control group always.
That's all like another guy we know that likes to tell us all about movies he's not seen.
Who's that?
Alex does that shit. Alex will sit there and tell you,
yeah.
give you all kinds of opinions about a movie, and you'd be like,
I may
have
have
you seen that movie? You'd be like, no, I haven't watched that movie. Like, how do you know what you're talking about?
See, I think I've seen the motion picture, but it was like so long ago that I don't I remember maybe like pieces of it.
And that's actually the way I'm going to be as well, because I wanted to watch this ahead again, because they had everything on Netflix, all the original Star Trek movies, and now they're gone. They were there like a week ago, and they just took them off.
Yeah,
so none of the originals are on there anymore. So I didn't get a chance to rewatch the original, but I have seen the original a couple of times, so I do remember part of it.
it's like an hour and a half of this sound.
Yes, it is.
But big reason why we decided to do Wrath of Khan is because we wanted to do Into Darkness, and Into Darkness is in a way kind of a remake of Wrath of Khan. So we didn't like Into Darkness. So we want to talk about Wrath of Khan and what we think of that. And also, again, like we noted in the Into Darkness episode, we have not... This is being recorded before the new Star Trek is out. So we have not actually seen the most recent Star Trek movie, which I think is out our time, a couple of weeks, I think, for us.
22nd, I think. Yeah.
So it's a couple of weeks for us. Also, what is kind of interesting with this one, this is episode 10. Of MySequel, which is kind of great. It's not episode 10 that we've actually recorded. We have another Rocky 4 is at some point going to be coming out. We've already recorded. We have our lost episode of Under Siege 2.
That's got to come out way down the line after.
Someday we will release it. That was the first episode we recorded, and we decided it was not very good. So we kind of scrapped it and did a new first episode. And then actually, technically, there's two number 4s because we did that So our numbering system's all screwy.
One
But
of
whatever.
these-
This is
one of
episode
these
10.
days- One of these days when we do our DVD release, all this stuff's going to come out on special features.
There you go.
The lost episodes.
But as far as numbering goes on everything, this is episode 10 for us, which is kind of a neat little milestone, I think.
I do too. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's been fun to do. We've been doing it now, as far as our time goes, a few months now since the first episode was recorded. Was back.
It was last winter. I would say we're
Yeah, it was winter.
We've been doing this for 6 months. It took because we redid the website. So I mean,
Yeah, we were
recorded
kinda-
a bunch of them, and then they kind of were on hold for a while. But yeah, we started doing this last fall.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but it's been fun. So, but yeah, let's talk about Wrath of Khan. So I guess to talk about, though, Wrath of Khan as a sequel, let's talk a little bit about the motion picture, what some of us remember of the motion picture. I do remember, a thing about the motion picture is, I remember when I watched it, what it really made me think of was 2001: A Space Odyssey. It reminded me more of that than it did Star Trek. Because I think when I saw it, TNG would have been going. I would have been watching TNG and stuff, and I think that's what made me go seek out the motion picture. I think I rented it from the library, actually. So it has been a while, but I was already kind of a Star Trek fan at that point, more of the newer stuff. And I remember not really liking the motion picture that much.
The motion picture was a tough movie. I guess I kind of like it a lot more now than I did at the time. Like, the more I watch it, the more I like it. But
Sure.
yeah, it's a slow paced movie.
Yeah. Monty's nodding on an audio podcast.
Yeah, well, no, I'm the only person in this room who was alive when the movie came out.
What year did it come out?
It was
78?
78 or 9. Oh, were you?
Robert was a baby.
Barely.
Okay. Point
Baby
is-
Robert was taken to the theater to watch.
No, they didn't take me to the theater. but
Okay, I take it back.
I was born in '78, so it's possible.
You're the one that remembers it.
I do remember this, and yeah, but I didn't see it in the theaters. I saw it on television, probably in NBC,
Yeah.
Sunday night at the movies.
in the movies, and loved it.
It is way more, what I remember of it, hard sci-fi than the later ones are kind of actiony, kind of action-adventure movies, sci-fi action-adventure. Whereas motion pictures really more hard sci-fi. It's sci-fi. It's not an action movie at all.
I think I would characterize it as being probably closest in line with Gene Roddenberry's idea of what Star Trek should be. I'm guessing. I don't know this. I never read up on that.
I have heard that, though, that motion picture was kind of Bradbury's baby. Or Roddenberry's baby.
Roddenberry, yeah. Did I say Brad?
No, yeah. I've heard that before, though, that this is kind of what he wanted.
I gained a whole new appreciation for the motion picture after I read some of William Shatner's books and discovered that V'ger is Borg.
Really? That's interesting.
Yes. In the books, there's a really interesting, this is kind of on a tangent, but there's a really interesting thing where Spock is captured by the Borg, and they go to assimilate him, and they stick him in the little assimilation chair, and then they just stop. And Spock asks the drone, he's like, what's going on? And the drone says, well, you're already Borg, you're already part of the collective. He's like, what are you talking about? You mind melded with V'ger. You're Borg. And they explain how V'ger, because in the motion picture they explain how Voyager was picked up by a technologically advanced race.
Oh, that's a neat idea.
Yeah, and so they incorporated that into, or William Shatner incorporated that in his series of books, and V'ger became an assimilated Borg thing.
That's such a cool reveal. Like, I do remember the reveal of Voyager. Of that being like the reveal that they wipe away and they realize that it says Voyager, not V'ger, which I do remember that reveal as being kind of really cool. But the motion picture is a very different movie. And it did come a long time after the show was done. The show had been done for quite a while. even the animated series had come and gone, and everybody had kind of come and done other things. So I think it is kind of fascinating that the movie even got made. You know?
It's interesting that George Lucas has pointed out that Star Wars got made a lot on the fact that Star Trek had such a devoted fan base, and I don't know if the success of Star Wars contributed to sci-fi was starting to get hot again towards the end of the 70s.
I think you could argue that Star Wars definitely did help Star Trek come back. You know, that you had the success of that, and then Galactica came after, and
2001: A Space Odyssey.
So no, I think you could attribute some of Star Wars' success to what helped Star Trek come back. So yeah, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about motion picture because really, at the end of the day, Wrath of Khan doesn't really have anything to do with the motion picture, other than at this point, Kirk is an admiral. In the motion picture, he's an admiral, which he's an admiral in Wrath of Khan.
But didn't Spock, was he just on was he just on sabbatical? Because they pick him up on Vulcan. Like, I remember Spock with a beard, and he was doing something, I don't know, contemplating the universe or something. But did he actually leave Starfleet, or was he just like on sabbatical or something? Does anybody remember?
My understanding is the main importance story-wise, about the only things that really relate to Khan is that, I mean, obviously their 5-year voyage is over, and everybody had kind of scattered to the four winds, and that's what it served. Is that one of the themes in the first one is Kirk is kind of, he's not a Starfleet captain,
right?
And it's where he reinserts himself into that role that he very clearly wants to be there. And
he really doesn't want to be an admiral.
Even in that very first movie, and this reoccurs,
throughout
the rest
all
of the series.
Even Generations, Kirk talks about when he's talking with Picard that he says, "Don't let him ever make you an admiral. Don't let him promote you."
But that first movie, I can't remember, the Enterprise has been retooled, rebuilt basically, almost from the ground up. And I can't remember the character. Decker,
something like that.
Captain Decker. What's his name from Seventh Heaven?
Yeah.
That guy.
He's effectively the guy who should probably be captain of that ship,
right?
And Kirk kind of reasserts himself. Into that. And that's what that movie serves, is to reunite the cast.
Well, I think that's a good segue. So they were reunited in motion picture, and we come to Wrath of Khan. So Wrath of Khan is... Wrath of Khan starts... you have part of it at the beginning is the Kobayashi Maru, where Lieutenant Savick, Kirstie Alley, good-looking Kirstie Alley, way back when, is a Vulcan. She's training. She's doing the Kobayashi Maru with the whole crew. It's kind of an effective little fake out without having seen it before. Because basically she's captain, but everybody else is Sulu's there, and Uhura and Bones and all of them. And they're in a conflict and they all die. And then Kirk opens it up and it was all a test that she failed.
So you can tell they're all faking it.
They are kind of phoning it in a little bit.
But I think that's supposed to be like,
well, I think
obvious.
It is. That it's not real. Yes. Well, they're getting old at this point. They don't want to just throw themselves around all willy-nilly. Especially when the ship gets shot. And you always have to shake the camera, and then everybody has to throw themselves around.
Something has to explode.
Yep. Which kind of gets us with the cast. Then they're going on a voyage. At the meantime, Chekhov is on a new ship. And they are going to check out planets for the Genesis device, which is this device that could turn barren planets into planets, fertile planets.
Right.
Cool thing. So they're scouting out locations, and Chekhov and the captain beam down to this desert planet where they find Khan. And what's the line there, Robert? You gotta do it as Ricardo Montalban would. When they figure out that it's not Ceti Alpha.
This is Ceti Alpha 6!
There you go. Because they think it's a different planet. There you go. Good job, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, because basically, I actually did some reading on this. The director of Wrath of Khan had never seen Star Trek before he did Wrath of Khan. Well, he hadn't, and then he got it, and then he watched all of the episodes. Basically, he got blown up on him. But another thing, what they wanted to do is they actually did want to go back to an episode. That was in their head before they even came up with Wrath of Khan. They wanted to do a sequel kind of to an episode.
Right.
And then when they were going through it, what he felt like they didn't have great in a lot of the episodes was a great villain. And that's why they went back to Khan, with somebody that they could possibly use in that role.
Boy, did they find a winner. You know, it's gonna be funny that we, going back to the last podcast, we pissed on the character of Khan so much as being a shitty pick for a super villain. But man, he was a good villain for this movie. Yeah,
for this movie, and I think that's the thing, and that's what I kind of like about this movie is awfully self-contained. Which will be something interesting when we get into the sequel portion, when we talk about is this good? Because really, this movie is a long episode. It's kind of a longer episode with a bigger budget and a little bit more dramatic, but it really doesn't have anything to do with the motion picture, which is kind of interesting. So we will kind of talk about that. But yeah, from the episode Khan, they wake him up in this ship. He tries to take over everything. He picks up Chekhov with one hand. They fight. Kirk beats him up, because Kirk beat up everybody. And then they basically maroon him on a planet. But not in like a horrible way. Like, they put him on a planet that's nice, and they figure is going to be nice for them. You know? Figuring, hey, everything's okay. And then what we find in Wrath of Khan is there was basically a destruction, that the planet was thrown out of its orbit, and it's a whole mess now. So Khan's pissed. You know? Because really, as angry as Khan could be, a lot of that comes from basically the planet died after Kirk put them there, is why he kind of, and that's why I think he doesn't work as great as a villain in Into Darkness, because Khan, the Wrath of Khan comes from that moment, but Khan never having met Kirk in Into Darkness before that happens makes him a lesser villain. But Khan has personal stakes. So they're able to, they steal the ship Chekhov's on, and they go after Kirk with a great scene where they attack Kirk, which again I think is something that highlights the interestingness of Khan. Is he's tricky.
Well, and to be clear, the reason why Khan is doing this is that we do know his motivation. We do know that this is about a bit about vengeance.
Yep. He explains it. He had a wife that died.
Well, and
Wrath of Khan.
Right.
And besides the whole planet thing, one of the things you pick up right away about Khan is Khan's very arrogant, and Kirk straight up beat him.
Yep.
Like even if nothing had happened and the planet was still golden and they had set up a nice little civilization and now there was this big huge community.
Right.
Even when Kirk come back and all that shit was good, Khan would still want to kill Kirk.
Right. Just not as much, but yes. Yeah, there's a lot more layers to the character. There's the arrogance part of it. There's what he's lost. There's a lot to that to explain why he does what he does. But I think we were talking about big ships in our Into Darkness. Everything's a big ship. One of the things I like about Wrath of Khan so much is the ship that they have, the Reliant, is the ship they steal, is not as good a ship as the Enterprise.
Pissant little science ship is what it is.
Right. It is not as advanced. So Kirk uses his cunning, and they trick them, and he's able to attack them. You know? So it shows a little bit more, instead of just saying, oh, he's really smart and capable, we see Khan do something smart and capable. You know? He still kind of gets bested by Kirk, and the scene where Kirk, they trick him is awfully silly because they just turn their back to the view screen and they're talking to each other and like, oh, he can't hear us as we plot. He's got to know we're plotting against him. It's kind of silly, but you can almost go with the arrogance though, where he feels like he's beaten Kirk already. You know, but I like that. I like there's a lot more of ingenuity, I think, in this movie.
Right.
Is what I enjoy. Then we go to the space station. We meet Carol Marcus, the real Carol Marcus, not the pointless character from Into Darkness. However, this Carol Marcus is also a little pointless. There's a little bit there because I feel like a lot of this movie, where we talk about Kirk wanting to become a captain and that, a lot of this movie too is talking about them getting older. Like, because there's even the scene at the beginning of the movie where it's Kirk's birthday and Bones brings him glasses, is his present. It is kind of a rumination on, holy crap, we are getting older.
And the fact that that they were using this is a sequel to an episode of the TV show is that the conclusion of that episode was very hopeful. Mm-hmm. And this sequel is showing, hey, your actions, however whatever the intention, can have ramifications. They can come back to haunt you, and that being part of age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this kind of the sins of youth coming back to you later, which again makes it better than Into Darkness. Is there's themes in this movie? There's stuff that it's kind of about, but then we meet. It's not just blow up.
Well, and there's history.
Yeah,
like there's real history that they're pulling from, which, and we're doing a whole different movie. We're still pissing on Into Darkness.
Yes,
Into Darkness has absolutely zero history to draw from.
Right.
They're trying to cheat things away from the movie Wrath of Khan, whereas Wrath of Khan kind of came naturally from the history of the series.
I would say one thing that doesn't work as well in this movie, though, to admit, and I love Wrath of Khan. I really, really love. I think it's my favorite Star Trek movie. The stuff with his kid doesn't work the best, I don't think. I think he's kind of an annoying character. Yeah, I think that stuff doesn't work great. I get what they were going for, but I don't think it was the best.
It seemed kind of out of left field. Like it kind of fits with some of the other stuff he talked about, like him getting older and stuff. But then it was also like, this is just so out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't think it helped. I don't think that guy is a great actor who played Kirk's son. You know, he's not terrible, but anyway, so we meet them, and then we get the. This is also a big reason why I love Wrath of Khan is Ricardo Montalban as Khan is great. I read some interesting stuff about him. Was apparently because at this point he was doing Fantasy Island at this time, so that's one reason why Khan is never in the same scene as Kirk in the movie, because they had to accommodate his shooting schedule for Fantasy Island. So that was one reason why it was written that they never actually interact with one another.
He totally needed to get his midget on that movie somewhere.
He should have been with them.
Tattoo.
Look, watch the plane. I love that.
It was interesting. He even talked about that he didn't really remember how to play Khan. So Paramount sent him the episode, and he rewatched that episode a ton ahead of doing the movie so he could get back into Khan.
Old Khan is way better than young Khan.
Oh, he is. He chews the right amount of scenery as Khan. It's an over-the-top performance. I mean, it is. There's nothing really subtle about what he's doing, but it's like just the right amount of scenery chewing that it really works. You know?
Oh, it's a good. It's a good balance to Shatner.
Yeah.
Who does same thing. You know.
Oh yeah. It's just the right amount. It works. And I'd always heard the rumor, and this was interesting. This is if you go with the director of the movie, because there was always the rumor that because Khan doesn't he's got his chest exposed through the whole movie. He's got these giant pecs, and there was always the rumor that was not real. That was a fake. They made a prosthetic to make him look buff. According to the director of the movie, that is not true. That was Ricardo Montalban's chest.
Looks like his chest to me.
Yeah, he said it was Ricardo Montalban just got in shape for the movie. That he did crap ton of push-ups is what he said. So apparently that's his chest. But he has such a great moment, and one of my favorite is, so he traps Kirk and some of them on the Genesis planet. We'll get into that more. But he traps him. But I'm going to leave you buried alive. And then the weird echo, alive.
That's one of the things I like too about that movie is you see throughout the movie that these two guys are dancing around each other with their strategy and their intellect. Yep. They're constantly.
Yep, it's great. And then I've seen this dubbed before. I wish I had made this up. I've seen it dubbed this way, but it's great. So then we get the Khan, which is it's so parodied. it kind of works in the movie itself. Like, it's such a cheesy thing that we talk about now is, people yelling Khan. I think it kind of works in the movie. Where Kirk goes, Khan! And then Khan just has this face. And I saw somebody dub it as an evil-gasm. Because he just has this face. And you can't hear this because this is audio, but he's like, oh. It's great.
Do you think in the story, in the context of the story, do you think Kirk was hamming it up a little bit for...
I think he was. Because in the context of that, he is playing Khan. He's tricking Khan at that point. Because he knows the Enterprise is coming back. So he did trick Khan. So I think you can take him going a little over the top as possibly being... I mean, it's maybe how much credit do you want to give Shatner? If you want to give him credit, it's a character choice. If you don't, it's just him kind of overplaying it a little bit. But... So yeah, then we learn more about the Genesis, which I think is a neat thing, and also the Genesis, the effect in the movie where they show what Genesis does was one of the first full 3D sequences in the movie up to that point.
Didn't
Tron?
Industrial Light and Magic, ILM do that?
I think so.
I think that was one of their first projects ever.
Yeah. So it's one of the first full 3D sequences in a movie, which is kind of fascinating. It's where they show, and it doesn't look great, but it's neat.
It's okay for.
It's okay. I mean, for the time it was like cool.
Yeah. That's another thing that I like. That I really like. That I was complaining about in the last MySequel is that even though that a good chunk of this movie is a fight between Khan and Kirk, you still had the idea of Genesis and creationism in the background there, which you didn't have any kind of thread like that in either the first Star Trek reboot or Into Darkness at all. It was...
I would say for as sad as Wrath of Khan is, we're obviously going to talk about spoilers here. Spock dies at the end of it. Very sad moment. But I feel like even with that sadness of it, Wrath of Khan ends on such a hopeful note. Like, even the music, they shoot his torpedo casket off and it lands on Genesis. And then there's just a sequence of showing the Genesis plants, life growing and all that, and the music kind of swelling. And it's like, this feels hopeful. Even though that's sad, it's like there's this new life and this new fascinating thing. And that's what I really enjoy, and I think that is Roddenberry. A lot more Roddenberry that I think has been lost in the newer movies. At the end of the day, Roddenberry always wanted Star Trek to be very hopeful. Star Trek is a very hopeful vision of our future. We eliminate money. We don't have the same problems we have now. I mean, that's the Star Trek future. We've come together. It's this kind of great idea of humanity being better than we are. So, and I think that's in the movie. That's part of the movie, is that we do that. And I feel like the newer ones are so much darker and more pessimistic about humanity, about what we do.
And they keep blowing up the fucking shit.
Well, they're probably also made in a darker age.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Less carefree time, perhaps.
That's true. So...
Wait a minute, in the very next movie, it was the first time they just full-on destroy that ship.
They did. They do kind of blow it up somewhat.
I mean, so, it's not that... they did it in the very next movie.
Well, okay,
they started the trend in 3.
Yes.
Yeah, but like I was saying earlier,
these are only 2 movies. Like every other Star Trek movie, the ship's destroyed, right?
Well, and the new ones though they do. Like in the first reboot, Nemo essentially.
Nero. They should have called him Nemo.
Nemo. That little blue fish.
Yep.
Nero.
Finding Nero
wrecks the Enterprise, right?
Yep.
In the very next movie, Admiral RoboCop wrecks the Enterprise.
And then
this very next movie, it looks like termites wreck the Enterprise.
Alien Idris Elba is going to destroy the Enterprise. Yeah, but they do get a sweet kick-ass bird of prey in Star Trek 3, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into a whole lot more of the plot of the movie. The plot's great. There's one talking about one thing I really like about this is, like Robert was saying, that there's the interplay between Kirk and Khan, and there's a part where both ships are pretty well damaged, and Kirk, though, to get the upper hand, is able to goad Khan into following him into this nebula. So nobody's sensors are working in it, which is a great scene because it does show how much Khan wants to kill Kirk at that point. Is because he has that first officer that keeps kind of cropping up throughout the movie, where he's trying to be the voice of reason, like, let's not follow him. This is not a good idea.
Khan,
and Khan's like, no, and then quote Shakespeare, and then
Khan, I'm laughing at your superior intellect.
And then Khan is so pissed off at that.
There's that whole sequence where they basically they balance out the ships, so it is just their wits, and Kirk does have a crew of trained people working with them that can balance out, how brilliant Khan is supposed to be. It's just great tension, that whole thing.
Yeah, it's very
masterful.
You look at it, it didn't have the effects and a lot of that stuff that we have now, but it is so much more suspenseful than Into Darkness.
In 1982, the effects looked, just incredible.
Yeah.
I like the kind of interesting, the way the crews on each ship are kind of opposite or mirror images of each other. For example, you mentioned Khan's second officer.
Right.
He's constantly contradicting Khan. He's constantly saying, we can't do this. We can't do this. So there's a lack of trust. There's clearly a lack of trust there in this crew.
They're more afraid of Khan a little bit.
Well, and these crew that have sworn to live and die 100 years before you were born. Right. Whereas on the other ship, you have at one point, Sulu doesn't have a targeting computer, and he's just like, I'm going to guess. Right. At one point, Lieutenant Savick questions what Kirk is doing, and Spock kind of hushes her. Yeah. But then after, of course, they get their shields knocked out and shit, Admiral Kirk's like, you go right on quoting regulations. You keep me. You know what I mean? There's a trust there amongst the Enterprise crew that is clearly lacking in the other crew, and I really kind of like that.
Correct me, I took. When I was watching it as a kid, I took away the sense that that Khan's first officer, whatever, was his son. Yeah,
I don't know if they ever really come out and say it, but there is a connection more there.
Well, they look very similar.
Yeah, they played it, whether he is or not. He probably views as a surrogate son, which is. Although I agree with Derek completely about the acting abilities of the actor who did Kirk's son, and that it wasn't necessarily incorporated. It was an important idea because you do see that Kirk is this. It has been this estranged father. He's not. There really isn't much connection. He just learned about it. They're at odds because this is an interesting thing about. This in motion picture, I'm going to back up here. In Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the Starfleet was not as militaristic. They weren't portrayed. The structure wasn't quite the same, and that is very clearly different in Khan.
Yeah.
And the it feels like they are. This is a form of military. And so the military and science division is even how they kind of refer to things.
Yeah.
So and
because they don't trust. Because that's the thing is his son doesn't trust Starfleet.
Right.
They're scientists, but they don't trust Starfleet.
So you have this father and son that are not close, but they're the good guys. And you have the father and son, whether he's his son or not, they are more family than Kirk and his actual son. And so that's a really kind of cool dynamic. I think it serves
there's a purpose there.
Yeah, a purpose.
What were you going to say, Matt? You had something earlier you were going to...
I like the fact that they never have to punch each other.
Yep. I love that Khan is defeated in the end with the great line, he's from an ancient age, he doesn't think in 3 dimensions. And that's how they kind of trick him. They get behind him because they're not flying in a straight line. They're using a three-dimensional space, which is funny because they don't use that a lot in Star Trek. There isn't a lot of times that they really use three dimensions. Pretty much everybody's always kind of on the same plane. But I like that there's some ingenuity in defeating Khan that I think is not in Into Darkness, where Spock punches him into submission. Where it's like, oh, no. And again, I think it's funny that there is the limitation that was born of the limitation of not being able to get Ricardo Montalban, that they're never on screen together. I think really works in this movie. That Khan and Kirk are never together. They're never in the same place. And I think that is kind of an interesting dynamic for the movie as a whole. It is kind of a fascinating way to do it. Yeah, there's never hand-to-hand moments ever. The only little bit is when they try to help get Chekhov get the bug out of his ear. But there isn't much.
It doesn't feel that way though. It's weird. It does not feel that they don't ever interact.
Right. Because they talk so much to each other, but it is a very. And I actually had read too that Ricardo Montalban was kind of annoyed by that. He was talking about he was supposed to give him these lines, and he was giving his lines opposite just like a script person. And he said that was kind of hard. It took a little bit of him getting used to be able to do the lines because, in the movie, him and Kirk are talking and throwing jabs at each other, but he's, in reality, making the movie, he's just talking to this, low-level script person that's just reading Kirk's lines, and he was kind of talking about that was a little bit of a pain for him.
Doesn't it bother you, the earworm thing, that, it kills the... How does it come out?
Yeah, the earworm just kind of
drives him crazy, and he shoots himself. But Chekhov just falls down. The thing falls out of his ear
because he loved Kirk so much.
Yeah,
it was the power of love.
Conquers all, money.
No, the worms are another. That's kind of another moment too that doesn't work the best. Well, it's just kind of like, eh.
Well, we can't kill Chekhov,
right? Because he's Pavel.
That's why it happened.
Yeah, but I want to talk more about how great Ricardo Montalban is. I love, and this is always what I've loved in Star Trek movies and TV shows, is quoting Shakespeare all the time. I always love that they talk about it as a Klingon proverb. That Shakespeare quotes are always attributed to a Klingon proverb.
Revenge is a dish best served cold.
Yep.
That was also in Undiscovered Country.
Yep. They do a lot of Shakespeare in Undiscovered Country, but I love that. But I love
same director.
Yeah. That was the big thing, is that's why they brought him back, is they weren't happy with 5, and Wrath of Khan was still well beloved and things like that, so that's why they brought him back to do 6. And 6 is great. 6 is probably my second favorite of the Star Trek movies. So, but yeah, Ricardo Montalban is just having so much fun in this movie. It's great,
He is a very likable villain. Like, it's not often that you have a villain that you want to see more of. But you definitely, I think...
He's just having so much fun trying to kill Kirk.
Yeah, he's definitely got a presence.
It's to quote Shakespeare, and I love that. And I love the little thing that I noticed is he's wearing like a cape, the captain's uniform of Starfleet.
It's kind of like the Joker.
Ricardo Montalban, Khan. He's playing with Kirk, and yeah. No, he's great. But I think, like we were talking about, the difference between this and the newer movie is he has way more motivation, and he's just more interesting. Like I said, I feel bad for Benedict Cumberbatch in the new one because he's a good actor. He just doesn't have that much to do other than be evil and try to sound important on every line. Whereas, again, Ricardo Montalban just has very different... It's a much different... They don't feel like the same character in the slightest.
Cumberbatch never showed any pecs.
That's true. He should have.
He should have showed some cleavage.
Should have, yep.
Some male cleavage.
They cut out the shower scene.
There was a shower scene with him in it, apparently.
Where he looks like he has soap in his eyes. And
that's ridiculous.
It is very weird.
Yeah. So that movie could have been dumber. But I think the funny thing, though, of them doing Khan is Khan doesn't feel like Khan. And I guess they could argue the idea being that things are so different from the timelines, that's why he's not similar. But then there's almost the weird thing of, why did you even do Khan then? Because it's a name. But I mean, story-wise, like, if you're not even going to take the stuff that made Khan great and incorporate, why?
Cumberbatch's Khan doesn't seem at all like the Khan from the original.
True, yeah, he's different from the episode.
Which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that you can't really compare him to the Khan of the Wrath of Khan, because that takes place
True.
5 years later. 10
Right,
years
yeah, I
later,
mean, you could
or
argue.
whatever that time frame is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He's nothing like. And again, you can get away with that because to an extent because he's discovered differently. He has different interactions. First contact with Starfleet
still.
is much different, and yeah, but this movie's so.
Oh, but they
so
go
much
to
better.
such, they did such a good job in the 2009 Star Trek of trying to match some of the characterizations of without just mimicking him all out. That's true. Then they pick a villain, have the villain not seem like,
Especially such a charismatic villain.
right.
That's what Khan's kind of known. He's charismatic in it, and you kind of stripped all that away.
So can I point out the one really, really, really stupid scene in Wrath of Khan for me?
All right.
It's the one right after they get tricked and Khan shoots up the Enterprise. So you got the new guy who is Scotty's nephew?
I can't remember nephew or son or grand. He's something.
So he's
related. And we
gets-
see him early in the movie. However, at least credit to the movie, they established it early. Unlike Into Darkness, where nothing is established. At least in Wrath of Khan, we are introduced to that character. It's very briefly.
Right.
But I agree. Okay, continue, because this is dumb.
So he's established. So they get attacked. And the very next scene is they're on the bridge. Captain Kirk and Spock is about to go someplace. They turn around, and there's Scotty holding this guy in his arms, right? So you've got to... And I guess I never caught this really until the last time I watched it, right? So... But you got to think this logically. So you're on the engineering deck. It gets shot to shit. Your crewman gets burnt to hell. You pick him up. You carry him all the way to the bridge, bypassing sickbay to tell your captain he stayed at his post while the others ran.
I started laughing when I saw it, actually.
And then take him back down to sickbay where he dies. Also, fuck the booties. Can't stand. You guys notice the booties that the engineering people are wearing?
Yep.
The snow boots, the moon boots that those guys
And
have
their
to
silly
wear?
gloves.
Oh, that's so.
That
that's so
Spock has to
terrible.
die in.
What was...
And those terrible gloves.
Sorry, when I saw it in the theater when I was 12, I probably saw it in the theater 3 times. And when they're down underground in the cave that they dug out for the storage thing, some of the props in there, some of the storage containers, were these little space capsule toy boxes that you could see. And I knew this because you could see them in the Sears and Roebuck Christmas catalog. And they had these things all over, and it's like, I don't know any kids, 12 years old or younger, who wouldn't recognize exactly what those were. And it pulled me out briefly, like, oh,
That's funny.
crap, I recognize where they got those.
That is kind of sad when you do see that. Or like when you can kind of tell something's like a Nerf gun.
Or
like
a prop that's been
Jordy's
in a bunch of
visor
different
is a
movies.
hair thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think last thing I want to talk about before we get into our last segments, I want to talk about the death scene. We touched on it a little bit in Into Darkness, that podcast, but let's talk a little bit. The big death scene of Spock at the end of this movie is, I love. Just the storytelling and everything. It's great because we keep having the interaction with Spock and Kirk throughout the movie. Spock talking about the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and we've established this stuff. And then when he does sacrifice himself, it's such a great moment, and it really works. And they're seen together. I think, like I said, Shatner gets a pretty bad rap about his acting, and honestly, pretty well deserved in a lot of it. But I think that scene between him and Nimoy, they both brought their A game. Like, that's affecting, and it works. And even he does the live long and prosper sign with his hands, and it's great. Like, that's very, very well done. And again, we're talking about what makes it work is they've been friends, we know so much about them, and then we're killing him. And like, I still even get a little choked up in the funeral, even though I sometimes wonder if this is kind of is Kirk being kind of a dick when he says the thing in the funeral. But I think it's maybe that Spock always did kind of appreciate his human side. So I think is why he said. But Kirk says, in all the beings in all of my travels, he was the most human. This is a great little moment, but
I don't think he was being it.
Well, no, I don't think he was. I mean, the character wasn't, but it's like when you think about it, it's like, but it was Vulcan. It was, also mostly Vulcan.
I think it's important to point out too that, for I guess context too, that at the time that movie came out, it was kind of known that Leonard Nimoy was wanting out of Star Trek.
Yeah, he wanted gone.
They knew that it was known that he was gonna be killed off.
Right.
Like this was not like a red herring. Is that the right? We knew
red herring
that they
would be
weren't
kind of
throwing us.
throwing you off.
Like we knew with Into Darkness that Kirk wasn't going to die,
right?
Or that he wasn't going to stay dead, or even if they'd have killed off Spock in that one, we were like, it was assumed. Because Leonard Nimoy literally legitimately wanted out, and he only agreed to do this movie if they killed him. Yep. It was a Han Solo move.
Yep.
And so that's part of where the impact and the weight of that came from, was that this is Spock saying goodbye for real.
Yeah.
I've heard that it was if the movie didn't, hey, if the movie did only so and everything, it might be it, but that they fully intended that, well, you know what, if it works,
they
then
do
it might
leave
be
it
worth your
open.
time to come back, and we'll pay you more next time.
And they did kind of leave it open in the movie, because he does do the mind meld with Bones. They do set that up in Wrath of Khan.
Well,
which comes into play in Search for Spock.
Yeah, and the device is the Genesis device, and we see the capsule doesn't explode; it lands on the planet.
They kind of hint at it.
It wasn't. They were giving themselves plenty of, this is a possibility.
Well, yeah,
but it would not have upset him if it hadn't worked out.
Right.
Yeah, I guess
could have been the end.
I guess what I'm going by is Leonard Nimoy's book, I Am Spock, and that's what he says. He says that I was done. I was out. That's how they got me in, was they had to kill me off. And then he goes on, I don't remember exactly how they talked him into coming back for 3. But
I think part of it wasn't, too, that he would get to direct 4.
That's what it was. He directed 3 and 4.
Did he direct 3?
I'm pretty sure he did.
I know he did 4. But I thought that was part of it, that he was going to direct. But, yeah, it's a very effective scene.
But, yeah, I mean, you're right. There was, as adults probably would have said, but I know younger audiences, at that time, somebody that big of a character dying meant that, they're not coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was the last time you believed anybody in science fiction was actually dead.
That's when they did it. Screwed everything up for the future. All right, we're starting to get kind of long here, so we're going to jump into our last segments here. Because honestly, I could just keep talking about Wrath of Khan. I love this movie.
All day long.
But let's talk about, is this a good sequel? And here's where things are going to get a little hinky.
By the way, Leonard Nimoy did direct Star Trek 3. Sorry.
Oh, okay. He did do 3 and 4. Okay. I don't think this is a great sequel to the motion picture, but it is a great sequel to the episode. In that the motion picture, I felt like, was trying to do very different things. Like we talked about, it was a very different movie, and they seemed to be trying something different. And this feels, in a way, a little bit of a regression from that. Where it's like, but we're going to kind of do an action movie. It's going to be great. It's going to be a really good action movie. But they kind of moved away from the things they were trying to do with the motion picture. And I think, in a way, it is a great Star Trek sequel. In terms of Star Trek, this is great. It paved the way for everything to come after it, and it's fantastic. But I think if you look at it just strictly as a sequel to the motion picture, I don't know how great it is as far as that's concerned. Even though it's exactly what the series needed to keep going, and everybody took elements from it to come. I mean, we're still, Into Darkness still took stuff from this. So, what do you guys think?
I think it's a great sequel, but because it rejuvenated the series. Like, you're right. It doesn't have anything to do with the motion picture, really. And we've kind of given movies flack for that in the past. But the motion picture could have killed Star Trek, right?
Absolutely. It almost did.
Yeah. I mean, not only did this rejuvenate the property, the Star Trek, it re-excited the fans, but it also set up, like we talked about, it set up the future movies. It really kicked us off. So, and it's nearly a perfect movie. I mean, I don't think there's a such thing, but I mean, it's such a great movie with the emotion and the action, and just there's a lot. There's so much. But like you said, we could talk about this movie for days. It's just the best Star Trek movie, bar none. Right. So yeah, I think it's a great sequel.
Sure. I think an interesting thing too is we're talking about this. Dear God, I hope if you're listening to this, you've seen Wrath of Khan. But if you haven't, go watch Wrath of Khan. It's also a movie. Sometimes movies from a while ago, you maybe remember fondly, and then you go back and rewatch it like, oh God, this was not good. Wrath of Khan holds up. Wrath of Khan's still good.
If you get past the 70s fashion, it totally holds up.
There is a little bit of that. But okay. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, sure. I agree.
Thanks, Matt.
I will. I hate to seem like I'm just taking the opposite position as Robert.
So okay,
here we go.
Everybody's got to do it.
But here's what I'm going to do: is conceptually, it's a pretty good sequel. From the idea of some of the ideas continuing on. Okay, these characters have stories that are related to the past, but we're exploring some new stuff conceptually. In practice, sequel to the sequel to the motion picture. Stylistically, they're completely different. The Starfleet feels like a different entity. I think it's a pretty poor sequel to the motion picture. It's a great movie. And it is, and conceptually, I think it's a good sequel to the episode. Again, stylistically, characterization-wise, in practice, I don't think it's a good sequel. It's a better standalone movie. And I think every sequel that follows it it all holds together great.
It's all chasing Wrath of Khan after that point.
But in terms of also doing something new and expanding new ideas, and those terms, doing what a sequel is supposed to do, it's a great sequel. Does that make sense? Like motion picture.
You hate me for no reason.
This is what we deal with, Monte, all the time.
Yeah,
I'm getting flashbacks to Force Awakens.
You're
podcast.
changing the damn rules on me.
No,
what are you, Kirk?
Ooh, yeah, that's not fair. Yeah, it's Kobayashi Maru. It's your opinion. It can't be wrong. It makes sense. It makes sense, I suppose.
I think we're all kind of on the same line a little bit, with it.
Oh yeah, I can't disagree that.
And I see what you're saying too, Robert.
What you're saying about the stylistic and the motion picture. Yeah, the motion picture is to Wrath of Khan what every Next Generation sequel is to every other Next Generation sequel, right? They don't have a goddamn thing to do with each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes. I mean, they're just using the same characters and they're just big one-off episodes. So yeah, I get it.
Well,
I get it.
Okay, suddenly they're wearing these things that they're wearing in Wrath of Khan look like uniforms,
and as opposed to the blue jumpsuits,
right? As opposed to pajamas, or
Oh, the pajamas.
Yeah.
No, I think and we're all on the same page that we all love this movie, so that's great. All right, let's talk about sequels. I'm going to be super boring, honestly, with this one because what is my sequel to the motion picture? Even though I'm contradicting myself a little bit of saying this maybe isn't a great sequel to it, it's Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan did what needed to be done. In that the motion picture, we weren't going to get another movie like that, I don't think. That would have sustained itself. And it wouldn't have sustained itself to the amount of movies we ended up and then the legacy of Star Trek after that, Next Generation, everything that came after. So, Wrath of Khan was the movie we needed it to be. It's like The Dark Knight. It wasn't the movie we deserved, but it was the movie we needed. I would have done something exactly like this. I think they took the right ideas that, maybe we want some sci-fi, we want some good sci-fi, but let's make it a little bit more palatable to a broader audience. Let's add some action in there, kind of stuff like that. I'm boring, but that's I kind of would have done this.
That's a tough question for this. Yeah, because if all I had to work off of was the motion picture, I could never have come up with this. I would never have picked that particular episode. Because, by the way, the Khan episode, I don't remember the name of that episode. That was not a particular...
Ship in a bottle? I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds... I don't know.
It's something like that.
That particular episode was not necessarily a very profound or well-liked episode. It was just an average episode.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's much better episodes that they could have picked from. So I mean, why pick it? I wouldn't have. So I don't think I could have done better than, and I don't think that I'd want to try.
Yeah.
It might have been the simplest to translate to a movie.
I think that was maybe part of it. Because, when you talk about well-known episodes, you've got the City on the Edge of Tomorrow where they go back in time with the Nazis. You've got the one with kind of like the godlike being out in space. And there's a lot of great all the stuff with mud.
I'll take a shot in the dark on this one. Okay,
right.
If we're gonna and this just popped in my head, if we're gonna pull from episodes, I would have done the one with the mirror universe.
Oh, brought that back.
I've read some books on some of the stuff that they've done with the mirror universe, and they did. I think Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine did a bunch with the mirror universe.
So I think it would have been nice to see Admiral James T. Kirk going up against Tiberius Kirk. Might have been that you might have been able to make something out of that too. But again, then you're kind of doing the same thing as Kirk versus Khan. So I don't know.
No, that's it. That could be interesting. Do you guys have anything for this one? This is kind of a hard one.
Not really.
This is a hard one. I don't even have a joke one for this one.
Trouble with Troubles?
Let's do it. Troubles.
Wrath of Tribbles?
There you go. The Tribbles form together and form a giant ship of Tribbles. And they shoot Tribbles.
What was the studio? Do you remember?
Paramount. This was Paramount still.
Okay, after I had read this somewhere. After motion picture was made, Paramount wanted to had desire to launch a TV network.
Yes.
And they had started developing a Star Trek series that was a follow-up to motion picture.
Right.
And it would have been the crew of the Enterprise and all that. Supposedly, that's what I heard. And a lot of those early scripts and ideas eventually ended up being adopted into Next Generation. Huh. So if that holds true, I think in a lot of ways Next Generation, kind of captures is a little bit of a sequel to motion picture, maybe more so than it is at least the characterization of Kirk from motion picture.
Yeah,
it ends up more like Picard.
Yeah, Next Gen was kind of pretty heady. A lot of it. There wasn't as many action-centric until we got some Borg stuff later. But it was a little bit more... Yeah, it was more thinking and debating.
Yeah, so I can't really imagine what I would have done differently for a sequel. Then it kind of needed... If you're going to do something... we already have the TV series.
Right.
The original series that's pretty well treaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even as few of episodes as there were, we don't need another, 2.5 hour movie of drifting through, oil and water.
This is
effects.
the argument for more Star Trek was Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let's end with then. Okay, Wrath of Khan exists. It's freaking awesome. How do you do 3? Because honestly, I don't really like the search for Spock that much.
I know.
Get out of here.
I don't particularly love it. this is hard too, because I would bring back Spock. I would find a way to bring back Spock using Genesis again. Great, because you need it. Spock needs to come back. I would have made the Klingons more of a villain in 3, because there's really just the one ship that's coming after the Genesis device are the villains. But I think expanding the Klingons' role could have been interesting in 3. Whatever they're doing to bring back Spock. I liked having... Khan is a great villain, and Christopher Lloyd Klingon was a very letdown villain in 3. Where I would have liked a stronger villain. Would have been my sequel. We had a great villain in Khan, not trying to copy what Khan was, but I would have tried to... A Klingon commander that's ruthless and all these different things, and there's a lot of elements I would have capped.
I've got it.
All right, Matt's got it.
Okay, so we gotta bring Spock back, but let's bring him back like Pet Sematary style, and he's like evil, and then he could be the villain. Problem solved.
Sometimes Dad is better. And then the old guy just walks onto the bridge of the Enterprise, talking to Kirk.
Exactly.
Do that again.
Sometimes Dad is better.
Do it again. Do it again.
Oh my God, I want this movie. Evil Spy. And he's killing members of the Enterprise. It's a horror movie. Oh my God, you could do a great horror.
He takes all of them back to Genesis to resurrect the crews he kills them.
Honestly, you could do a great horror movie on the Enterprise. It is kind of... Because the Next Gen did a couple of creepy episodes on the Enterprise.
He could be like Sam Neill in Event Horizon.
Pulls out his eyeballs.
Tries to neck pinch everybody, but doesn't do it right and squeezes everybody's head off.
Yeah, he just murders.
Walks around fucking up Vulcan sayings. The good of the one outweigh the good of the many. Die quick and suffer.
I love it. This is great. We've made... Oh my God. That was... Matt, good job.
That's perfection.
You get a gold star.
Yeah, like maybe Genesis really didn't work out the way they wanted to. It's just evil.
It's an evil planet. Or part of Khan's consciousness is part of Genesis now because he blew up inside of it.
Or like Khan is in Spock.
Oh, yes.
It could be like that episode of Rick and Morty with where they have Aberdolf Linkler.
Yes.
So what does that make this Star Trek 3, The Wrath of Khan 2?
It's the Wrath of Spock. Does anybody else have anything else?
I don't have nothing. Can't do better than that.
I've grown to really like 3. When it first came out, I thought it was a real yawner, and it just... Oh man, because 2 was so good, and then 3 it felt like a letdown. Other than seeing the Enterprise, destroyed. That was like a big moment, and the whole crew down there, and it's coming across the sky. You can't see me moving my hand and make hand gestures.
That is a
Why
great moment.
Why did you yell at him for that? You yell at the rest of us.
I already yelled at Monte earlier.
So
about it.
Yeah, that's a moment. It's not to the extent of Spock dying, but
right,
you really feel it.
Would you guys agree with me that the first act of 3 is a lot stronger than probably the last act? Because the stuff with Savick and or Sarek. Savick.
And his son.
And
the weird love.
And I don't know. I liked all that stuff where Bones is trying to deal with Spock, and there's some emotional stuff going on there that I really like in 3.
Yeah, I don't hate 3 at all.
Well, it grows on you, I think, with age.
It's probably one I need to see again. That'd be a fun marathon, honestly, to just tackle a bunch.
How they unceremoniously kill the son.
That is such kind of just like what?
What?
Wonder if they're like, oh, this guy can't act. Stab. You don't get to be in any more movies. Were they trying to Shia LaBeouf him? Where he was going to take over for Kirk? It was like the Indiana Jones. He was supposed to take over. Yeah, and everybody hated him. So they just stab him.
It really works from a storytelling point, and that Kirk at the time, isn't going to react, isn't going to grieve, but it comes back in Undiscovered Country.
Yep.
Which makes sense, So
I think
It works. It's just it was like, ooh.
Yeah, it's a stark comparison to 2.
So I think 3 was a pretty, that's probably the right sequel to just happen. I don't know what you might have gone too far. It would have been sequelitis if you'd done something else.
Yeah, if you're trying to always, I think that's the problem with the newer movies is they're trying to top each other. They're trying to keep topping themselves. Bigger, bigger. And I think 3 was probably smart, and 4 even, and then 4 especially too of going completely different direction.
Yeah,
I think it was smart.
I love the end of 3 with you have been and always shall be, or I have been and always shall be your friend. I just love the way he delivers that line.
I like
You're Jim. Your name is Jim.
I think one of the important things that happens in 3, though, that's interesting, again, in comparison to the newer movies, is evil Christopher Lloyd. Which, man, he should have hand that up way more being Christopher Lloyd and he's an evil alien.
You don't want Doc Brown Klingon.
I do.
You do what you did.
But he murders his son, right? And then they're fighting and all that, and he's going to fall over the edge, and Kirk still tries to help him up. He does try to help him up, and I think that it's a stark contrast to, even in 2009, when they shoot over to Nero, and it's like, oh, well, I'll take your surrender. And it's like, I thought you want that, Spock. No, I don't. They're like, no, murder them. It's kind of always, murder them. Please, let's kill them. Yeah, more than, and I kind of like a little bit, Kirk still, he keeps kicking him in the face. After he tries to help him and he still tries to murder him, I have had enough of you. Whoa! But he does take a moment to try to help the guy who just murdered his son.
That's true.
That is kind of a nice little Star Trek-y moment. The idea that supposedly that we're supposed to be better in the future than some of our more base instincts.
Sometimes dead is better. Do that again.
Sometimes dad is better.
I love it. We're definitely doing Pet Sematary 2, just so that you'll
we need to do Pet Sematary 2.
The soil of man's heart is Estonia. Something like that.
Monte can do it too. Let's do a whole episode where we just quote the old man from Pet Sematary.
How about Gage?
I want to play with you. Oh, I love those movies. Oh, I think with that, yeah, this is definitely. If this is a movie you haven't seen, if you're listening to this again, you probably should have, because we gave a lot of it away. But if you haven't seen Wrath of Khan, go see Wrath of Khan. Rent it, find it. I want to see. There's a director's cut out that I'm kind of curious to check out of Wrath of Khan. Yeah, it's fairly new, so I'm kind of curious to. I think I might pick that one up because I have Wrath of Khan already.
How much are they supposed to add to it?
I don't know. I don't really know much about it. Some of it was they remastered some of the effects, not like changed, but I think they redid some sound work to improve clarity and things like that was part of it as well. But anyway, yeah, I think with that, go check it out. Make sure subscribe, share, all this fun stuff. We are on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. We have 9 previous episodes for you to check out. If you're just hearing us for the first time, we have other content. If you visit our website, dirtysprocket.com, we have video shorts, short films, things like that. Horror, comedy, runs the gamut. We do all sorts of stuff, so keep an eye out. And make sure to let us know, what is your sequel to Wrath of Khan? Can you beat Matt's Pet Sematary?
You can't.
The gauntlet is thrown. With that, I think we'll call it a night. So thank you for listening. And thanks, guys. This was fun. It's a fun night. So, all right. Goodbye.